Welcome to Lotus Light Teachings, where we explore wisdom, resilience, and the beauty of life's journey. Today, we're diving into a topic that touches all of us at some point: how to find strength in the face of life's challenges. Have you ever felt like life was weighing you down? Like the harder you tried, the more distant peace seemed? If so, you're not alone, and this conversation is for you. Together, we'll uncover insights from timeless wisdom and real-life stories that will inspire and empower you to see your struggles in a new light. Let's begin this journey of understanding and growth. Picture this. It's the end of a long, exhausting day. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. You sit quietly, staring at the world around you, yet your mind feels like a storm. Why does life have to be so hard? You whisper to yourself. Have you ever been in that moment, caught between the desire to give up and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better? If this resonates with you, let me tell you a story. There's a parable about a man named Aaron, a farmer from a small village who worked tirelessly every day to care for his family. No matter how hard he tried, life seemed to push him further down. One evening, sitting by a river, Aaron decided to seek answers. He set out on a journey to find a wise teacher who could help him understand why life felt so heavy and unfair. Aaron's story might feel familiar because, in many ways, it's our story too. Like Aaron, we often face storms that test our patience, strength, and resolve. But what if these storms aren't here to defeat us? What if they're here to teach us how to grow? In today's video, we'll explore this idea that the challenges we face are not the end of the road, but stepping stones leading us to greater strength and understanding. Through the lens of Buddhist teachings and practical wisdom, we'll see how adversity can shape us, just as wind strengthens a tree's roots or mud nourishes the lotus flower. Together, we'll uncover ways to embrace life's struggles and transform them into tools for growth. 1. The silent strength. Why hardships are shaping you, not breaking you. Close your eyes for a moment and think about the most difficult challenge you've ever faced. Maybe it was a loss that left you breathless, a betrayal that shook the foundation of your trust, or the weight of responsibilities that seemed unbearable. In moments like these, it's easy to feel like life is tearing you apart. But what if, instead of breaking you, these hardships were quietly preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine? The Buddha once said, "Just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, even so the wise remain unmoved by praise or blame." These words hold a profound truth. Resilience is not about avoiding the storms of life, but about learning to stand firm amidst them. Let us journey together through the wisdom of this teaching and discover how the challenges in our lives are not obstacles but opportunities for growth. Imagine a mighty tree standing tall on a windswept hill. Each day, it endures the battering of fierce winds, its branches swaying and creaking under the strain. At first glance, it might seem as though the wind is trying to destroy the tree, yet something extraordinary is happening beneath the surface. With every gust of wind, the tree's roots dig deeper into the soil, anchoring it more firmly. Over time, the tree grows stronger, not in spite of the wind, but because of it. This metaphor mirrors our lives. Hardships are the winds that shake us, the forces that seem to test our limits. But beneath the surface of our pain and struggle, something transformative is happening. Each trial deepens our roots, our capacity for patience, our ability to endure, and our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. In Buddhist philosophy, this idea is closely tied to the concept of dukkha, or suffering, as outlined in the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth teaches us that suffering is an inherent part of life, whether it arises from physical pain, emotional loss, or unmet desires. This truth is not meant to discourage us but to illuminate the path forward. By acknowledging the inevitability of suffering, we begin to see it not as a punishment but as a teacher. When I was younger, I often struggled with the question, why me? A series of personal losses left me feeling abandoned and defeated. The more I fought against these feelings, the heavier they seemed to grow. One day, a mentor introduced me to the story of Kisa Gautami, a young woman from the Buddha's time who had also faced unbearable loss. After her child passed away, Kisa, consumed by grief, sought the Buddha for help. He told her to bring him a mustard seed from a household that had never known death. Desperate for solace, she knocked on door after door, only to find that every family had experienced loss. Gradually, she realized that her suffering was not unique but part of the shared human condition. This understanding didn't erase her pain but transformed it into compassion for others. Kisa's story taught me that our struggles connect us, not isolate us. They reveal our shared humanity and remind us that resilience isn't about being unshaken but about learning to grow stronger through what shakes us. Like the roots of the tree, we find our depth and stability not in ease but in adversity. Another cornerstone of Buddhist teaching that speaks to this idea is the law of anicca, or impermanence. Life is constantly changing. Nothing remains the same. The struggles we face today will not last forever, just as moments of joy are fleeting. This truth can be both comforting and challenging. When we're in the midst of hardship, it's hard to believe that the pain will pass. But impermanence offers hope. It reminds us that, just as the darkest night gives way to dawn, so too will our suffering eventually transform. One modern example of this can be found in the story of a man named James, a single father who lost his job unexpectedly. At first, the weight of his circumstances seemed unbearable. He questioned his worth, feared for his family's future, and felt consumed by shame. But over time, James began to see his situation differently. The forced pause in his career allowed him to reconnect with his children in ways he never had before. He started volunteering at a local shelter, which not only gave him purpose but also led to a new job opportunity. What seemed like a devastating loss became a turning point in his life. James's story illustrates the teaching of upaya, or skillful means. In Buddhism, this concept reminds us that challenges can be transformed into opportunities through wise action and perspective. It's not the hardship itself that defines us, but how we respond to it. So, how do we cultivate this silent strength, the ability to grow through life's challenges rather than be broken by them? The Buddha offers us the path of the Eightfold Path, a practical guide to living with wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. One step on this path, right mindfulness, invites us to be fully present with our experiences, even the painful ones. Instead of pushing away our struggles or drowning in them, we can observe them with curiosity and compassion. A mindful approach allows us to see the lessons hidden within our pain and to respond with clarity rather than reactivity. Another step, right effort, encourages us to cultivate resilience by nurturing positive qualities within ourselves. Just as the tree grows stronger by sinking its roots deeper, we can strengthen our inner foundation through practices like meditation, gratitude, and acts of kindness. These practices don't eliminate hardship, but equip us to face it with greater courage and grace. Reflecting on my own journey, I've come to see challenges as mirrors that reveal the parts of myself I might otherwise ignore. They've shown me where I'm holding on too tightly, where I need to grow, and where I can find strength I didn't know I had. They've also taught me the power of compassion, not just for others, but for myself. It's easy to be harsh on ourselves when we're struggling, but what if we treated ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend? I often think back to the tree on the hill, standing firm against the wind. Its strength doesn't come from avoiding the storm, but from embracing it as a partner in its growth. Similarly, our silent strength lies not in evading life's difficulties, but in allowing them to deepen our roots and expand our capacity to endure and thrive. As we navigate the inevitable storms of life, let us remember that hardship is not the end of the story. It is the soil from which we grow, the wind that strengthens our resolve, and the fire that tempers our spirit. With each challenge, we are becoming more resilient, more compassionate, and more attuned to the beauty of our unfolding journey. In the words of the Buddha, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. May these words remind us that every moment, no matter how painful, carries within it the seed of transformation. And just like the tree that stands tall against the wind, we too can rise with silent strength, rooted deeply in the wisdom of our experiences. 2. Patience in the darkness. The secret of unseen growth. Have you ever felt stuck, as though no matter how much effort you put in, nothing changes? Perhaps you've poured your energy into something, a relationship, a career, or a dream, and all you've met is silence, like shouting into a vast, empty void. In these moments, it's easy to question, am I doing something wrong? Why isn't anything happening? Let me share a story. In the dense forests of Asia, there is a type of bamboo that remains hidden for years after it's planted. Farmers will water it, nurture it, and watch over barren soil for 5 long years, seeing no visible growth. Imagine their frustration, their doubts. And yet, in the 5th year, something miraculous happens. Within weeks, the bamboo shoots up more than 80 feet, towering above the trees around it. What was it doing all those years? It was growing roots. Deep, intricate roots strong enough to support its immense height. This story of the bamboo is not just about nature. It's about us. The times in our lives when we feel lost, stagnant, or unseen are not signs of failure but preparation. Like the bamboo, we too are growing unseen roots, preparing for a breakthrough we cannot yet imagine. In Buddhism, the concept of anicca or impermanence reminds us that all things change, but often not in ways we expect or on a timeline we control. Life unfolds in its own rhythm, not according to our demands. When we resist this truth, we suffer. But when we embrace it, we open ourselves to patience, the kind of patience that allows us to trust the unseen growth happening beneath the surface. Think of a caterpillar. In its cocoon, it dissolves completely before transforming into a butterfly. From the outside, the cocoon looks lifeless, as though nothing is happening. But inside, a profound metamorphosis is taking place. This is patience in action. The caterpillar doesn't rush its transformation, nor does it resist the darkness of the cocoon. It trusts the process, even though it cannot see the outcome. When I think of patience, I recall a personal experience that challenged me to my core. Years ago, I went through a period of profound uncertainty. I had poured my heart into a career path that seemed to be crumbling beneath me. Every effort I made to salvage it felt futile, like trying to hold water in my hands. The harder I tried, the more lost I felt. But amidst this despair, a mentor shared with me the story of the bamboo, and I began to see my situation differently. Instead of fighting against the stillness, I started asking myself, what if this time of waiting is not emptiness but preparation? I began journaling, meditating, and reflecting on what truly mattered to me. Slowly, I realized that my identity wasn't tied to my career, but to how I showed up in the world, with compassion, integrity, and courage. Looking back now, I see that those months of stagnation were a time of unseen growth, laying the foundation for a new chapter in my life that I couldn't have anticipated then. Buddhism also teaches us about dukkha, or suffering, as part of the human experience. The first noble truth acknowledges that life inevitably includes pain, disappointment, loss, unfulfilled desires. But the Buddha didn't stop there. The remaining noble truths show us that by understanding the nature of suffering, we can find a way to transcend it. One way to do this is by practicing samavayama, right effort, a step on the Eightfold Path. Right effort doesn't mean exhausting ourselves in pursuit of immediate results. It means cultivating persistence and intention, even when we cannot see the fruits of our labor. Like the farmer tending the bamboo, we nurture our roots with the understanding that growth takes time. Consider the modern world we live in. It's driven by instant gratification, fast results, quick fixes, and immediate answers. But true growth doesn't follow this timeline. When we compare ourselves to others who seem to be thriving while we feel stuck, we lose sight of our own unique process. Social media, with its endless highlight reels, can make us feel like everyone else is shooting up like bamboo, while we remain invisible beneath the surface. But what if our greatest strength lies in the roots we are building in silence? I think of people like Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison, much of it in solitude. From the outside, it seemed as though his life was stagnant, a man cut off from the world. But during those years, he was growing unseen roots, cultivating patience, wisdom, and inner strength. When he emerged, he became a symbol of resilience and reconciliation, someone who transformed not only his own life but the course of history. The patience we develop during our darkest times is not passive. It's an active trust in the process of life. It's the decision to keep tending to our roots, even when we can't see the results. And this patience is deeply connected to the Buddhist principle of karma. The law of karma reminds us that every action we take, every thought, word, and deed plants a seed. These seeds may not sprout immediately, but they will ripen when the conditions are right. Imagine planting a garden. You sow the seeds, water the soil, and wait. Some seeds sprout quickly, while others take longer. You don't dig them up in frustration to check if they're growing. You trust that, with time and care, they will bloom. Life works the same way. Each effort we make, no matter how small, contributes to our unseen growth. Sometimes, patience means surrendering to the uncertainty of life. It means letting go of the need to control every outcome and learning to rest in the present moment. This doesn't mean giving up on our goals or dreams. It means recognizing that growth often happens in ways we cannot predict. I recall a teaching from the Buddha, who said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment." When we anchor ourselves in the present, we find that the darkness we fear is not empty, it is full of possibility. The cocoon is not a prison, it's a sanctuary for transformation. As we reflect on the story of the bamboo, the caterpillar, and the seeds we plant, let us ask ourselves, what roots am I growing in this season of my life? Perhaps the struggles we face now are preparing us for something beyond our imagination. Perhaps the stillness is not stagnation but a sacred pause, a chance to deepen our connection to ourselves and the world around us. Patience is not just about waiting, it's about trusting. Trusting that our efforts are not in vain, that life is unfolding as it should, and that we are exactly where we need to be. Like the bamboo, we may not see the growth happening beneath the surface, but one day we will rise, stronger, taller, and more grounded than ever before. 3. Flow like the river. How to adapt and thrive in any situation. Have you ever watched a river flow? This journey is rarely smooth or straight. It meets rocks, branches, and twists in its path, but it never stops moving. Instead of resisting these obstacles, the river flows around them, over them, or through them. It doesn't argue with the rocks. It adapts and keeps going. The river, in its quiet way, carries a profound lesson. True resilience isn't about brute strength. It's about the grace to adapt, the wisdom to let go, and the courage to continue, no matter the challenges. In life, we often find ourselves facing obstacles. Some small, like daily frustrations, and others vast, like profound loss or unexpected change. Our instinct may be to resist, to fight against what is happening. But resistance often leads to more suffering. As the Buddha taught, suffering arises not from the challenges themselves, but from our attachment to how we think life should be. Let us explore how we can embody the river's flow, drawing on Buddhist wisdom and practical insights to navigate life's obstacles with grace. There's a story from the Buddha's time that illustrates this beautifully. Once, a farmer came to the Buddha, overwhelmed by his struggles. His crops were failing, his family quarreled, and he couldn't find peace. He asked the Buddha for a solution to his endless problems. The Buddha replied, "I cannot help you get rid of your problems. You have 83 problems, and solving one will only make room for another." The farmer was baffled. "Then what is the point of coming to you?" he asked. The Buddha smiled and said, "I can help you with the 84th problem, the belief that you shouldn't have any problems." This story reminds us that challenges are an inevitable part of life. The river doesn't avoid rocks. It meets them naturally, as part of its journey. Similarly, our goal is not to eliminate problems but to learn how to flow with them. This mindset shift, though simple, can transform the way we experience life's difficulties. In Buddhism, the principle of anicca, or impermanence, teaches us that everything is in constant flux. The river flows because it embraces change. It doesn't cling to one path or one shape. If we, too, can learn to accept impermanence, we free ourselves from much of the resistance that creates suffering. Think about a time when you clung to an idea of how life should be. Perhaps a relationship that didn't last or a career path that didn't unfold as planned. Was it the situation itself that caused the most pain, or was it your attachment to what could have been? Impermanence doesn't mean passivity. It means acknowledging that life is dynamic, and within this flow lies the opportunity for growth and transformation. When a river meets a rock, it doesn't stop flowing. It carves a new path. In the same way, when life presents us with obstacles, we can view them not as barriers but as invitations to adapt and grow. One of the most practical ways to embody this adaptability is through the practice of mindfulness or sati. Mindfulness invites us to be present with what is happening right now, without judgment. When faced with a challenge, mindfulness allows us to pause and observe, rather than react impulsively. It's like standing at the riverbank, watching the current, rather than being swept away by it. I remember a time when mindfulness profoundly shifted my perspective. I was working on a project that meant a lot to me, but unexpected setbacks kept arising. My initial reaction was frustration. Why wasn't everything going according to plan? But through mindful reflection, I began to see the setbacks as opportunities. Each obstacle forced me to think creatively, to explore new approaches I hadn't considered before. In the end, the project turned out better than I had imagined, not despite the challenges, but because of them. Mindfulness also helps us recognize when we're holding on too tightly. Like a clenched fist trying to grip water, our resistance often leaves us empty-handed. When we let go, we create space for new possibilities. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means releasing the need to control outcomes and trusting the process, just as the river trusts its flow. The Buddha also taught about upaya, or skillful means, the ability to approach challenges with flexibility and creativity. This concept reminds us that there's no one-size-fits-all solution to life's problems. Like the river adapting to the shape of the land, we, too, must find the most skillful way to navigate each unique situation. Consider the story of Angulimala, a feared bandit who terrorized villages during the Buddha's time. When the Buddha encountered him, instead of running or confronting him with aggression, he used compassion and wisdom. The Buddha's calm demeanor and kind words disarmed Angulimala, leading him to abandon his violent ways and seek a path of peace. This story illustrates that adaptability is not just about changing ourselves, but also about meeting others with understanding and compassion, even in difficult circumstances. Modern life presents its own set of rocks in the river: stress at work, strained relationships, health challenges. Sometimes these obstacles feel insurmountable. But even in the most difficult situations, there are examples of human resilience that remind us of our capacity to adapt. Take Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor who endured unimaginable suffering in concentration camps. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Despite his circumstances, Frankl found meaning in small acts of kindness and in the hope of a better future. His story shows that while we may not always control what happens to us, we can choose how we respond. Choosing to adapt doesn't mean denying our pain. It means acknowledging it, sitting with it, and then deciding how to move forward. The river doesn't deny the presence of the rock. It flows around it, incorporating it into its journey. In the Eightfold Path, right view and right intention guide us toward this mindset. Right view encourages us to see life as it truly is, ever-changing, interconnected, and imperfect. It helps us let go of rigid expectations and embrace the fluidity of existence. Right intention reminds us to approach challenges with kindness and resolve, choosing responses that align with our values rather than reacting out of fear or anger. When we embody these principles, we find that obstacles lose their power to overwhelm us. Like the river, we learn to navigate life's twists and turns with grace, finding strength not in resisting change but in flowing with it. As we reflect on the river's journey, let us ask ourselves, what rocks am I encountering in my own path? How can I learn to flow around them rather than fight against them? Perhaps the obstacles we face are not here to block us but to shape us, carving new paths and revealing inner strengths we didn't know we had. The river reminds us that resilience is not about rigidity but flexibility. It's about trusting the flow of life, even when we cannot see where it leads. And just as the river eventually reaches the ocean, so too will we find our way, not by resisting the journey but by embracing it. 5. The resilient heart. Strength isn't about never feeling weak. Have you ever felt like the weight of the world was too much to bear? Like no matter how hard you tried, life kept throwing curveballs, leaving you drained and doubting your ability to keep going? These moments, when weakness feels overwhelming, are not signs of failure. They are proof of your humanity. Strength is not about never faltering. It's about finding the courage to rise each time you fall. In Buddhism, the idea of resilience is deeply tied to the understanding of dukkha, suffering or dissatisfaction, as outlined in the Four Noble Truths. The first truth acknowledges that suffering is an inevitable part of life, while the second truth teaches us that our attachment to things being a certain way intensifies that suffering. But it's the third truth that holds the key to resilience, the realization that liberation from suffering is possible. Strength, then, is not about avoiding pain but about transforming our relationship with it. Let me tell you a story. There was once a young woman named Patachara during the Buddha's time. She had endured unimaginable tragedy, losing her entire family in a series of devastating events. Broken and wandering, she came to the Buddha, her heart shattered. Instead of offering empty reassurances, the Buddha gently reminded her of the universal nature of loss. He said, "The tears you have shed in lifetimes of suffering are greater than the water in the oceans." These words weren't meant to diminish her grief, but to show her that she was not alone. Her pain, while profound, was part of a shared human experience. With this perspective, Patachara found the strength to rebuild her life, eventually becoming one of the most revered teachers of the Buddha's teachings. This story reminds us that resilience is not about pretending we are unaffected by pain. It's about sitting with that pain, acknowledging its depth, and choosing to move forward despite it. The resilient heart doesn't reject weakness. It embraces it as part of the journey toward wisdom and growth. In modern psychology, the idea of reframing our thoughts mirrors many of the Buddhist teachings. When we face challenges, our initial reaction is often one of resistance or self-blame. Thoughts like, "Why is this happening to me?" or "I can't handle this" can spiral into despair. But if we pause and examine these thoughts through mindfulness, a practice central to Buddhism, we can begin to see them for what they are, temporary, not truths. Mindfulness teaches us to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment. Instead of identifying with the pain, "I am weak," we learn to recognize it as a passing state. "I feel weak right now." This shift creates space for compassion, both for ourselves and for the situation we're facing. It allows us to see that our struggles are not permanent fixtures but moments in a larger narrative. The Buddha often used the metaphor of a lotus flower to illustrate resilience. The lotus, one of the most revered symbols in Buddhism, grows in muddy water yet blooms pristine and unstained. Its beauty is not in spite of its surroundings but because of them. Without the mud, the lotus could not grow. Similarly, our moments of weakness and struggle are the fertile ground from which our greatest strength emerges. Consider someone like Malala Yousafzai, the young activist who was shot for advocating for girls' education. Her story could have ended in tragedy, but instead, she transformed her pain into a global movement for education and equality. Malala's resilience is not about denying the trauma she experienced. It's about using it as a foundation to rise. Her life embodies the teaching that even in the darkest mud, a lotus can bloom. One of the Eightfold Path steps, right effort, speaks directly to resilience. It encourages us to cultivate positive mental states and abandon harmful ones. But this doesn't mean forcing ourselves to be cheerful in the face of hardship. It means gently redirecting our focus, moment by moment, toward thoughts and actions that support our well-being. Imagine climbing a mountain. Some days, the path feels manageable, and your steps are steady. Other days, the climb feels impossible. Your legs ache, and the summit seems unreachable. Resilience doesn't demand that you sprint to the top. It asks only that you keep moving, even if all you can manage is a single step. And if you need to pause and rest along the way, that too is part of the journey. Resilience is deeply connected to the concept of karma, the law of cause and effect. Every thought, word, and action we take plants seeds for the future. When we choose to respond to hardship with kindness, toward ourselves and others, we plant seeds of strength and healing. Over time, these seeds grow into the unshakable foundation of a resilient heart. I remember a time when I felt completely defeated. A series of personal setbacks had left me questioning my worth and my purpose. I turned to meditation not to escape the pain, but to sit with it. At first, the stillness felt unbearable. Every doubt and fear seemed amplified. But as I continued to practice, I began to notice something subtle yet profound. The pain was still there, but it no longer consumed me. I could see it as a wave, rising, peaking, and eventually subsiding. That experience taught me that resilience is not about erasing pain, but about learning to ride its waves with grace. The resilient heart is also a compassionate heart. When we face our own struggles, we develop empathy for the struggles of others. This compassion becomes a source of strength, reminding us that we are not alone in our pain. The Buddha emphasized this interconnectedness when he taught about metta, or loving kindness. Practicing loving kindness, even in the midst of our own challenges, helps us shift our focus outward, creating a sense of connection and purpose. One simple practice is to silently repeat the phrases of loving kindness. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering. When you're ready, extend these wishes to others, even those who may have caused you pain. This practice doesn't erase hardship, but it transforms the way we carry it. It turns bitterness into understanding and isolation into connection. As we reflect on resilience, let us ask ourselves, what does it mean to be strong? Is it the absence of struggle, or is it the ability to keep going, even when the path is uncertain? Strength doesn't mean we won't feel overwhelmed. It means we won't let that overwhelm define us. Like the lotus, we can rise above the mud. Like the mountain climber, we can take one step at a time. And like the river, we can flow around the rocks in our path, finding new ways forward. Resilience is not a destination but a practice. It is the ongoing choice to face life's challenges with an open heart and a steady mind. In the words of the Buddha, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. Let these words remind us that every moment offers an opportunity to rise, not as someone who has never felt weak, but as someone who has learned to find strength in that weakness. 6. The long game. Why your efforts are never in vain. There is a quiet frustration in pouring your heart and soul into something, only to see no visible progress. Have you ever felt that way? Like the work you do, the dreams you chase, or the love you give seems to vanish into the void without ever bearing fruit. It's a feeling that stings, a doubt that whispers, what's the point? But what if I told you that every small effort, every unseen action, is building something far greater than you can imagine? In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a story of a farmer who plants a seed. Each day he waters the soil, tends to the land, and waits. For weeks there is nothing. Frustration creeps in, and he begins to doubt whether the seed was planted correctly or if it will ever grow. But the Buddha reminds him that the seed doesn't grow on his timeline. It grows when the conditions are right. Beneath the surface, unseen, the roots are forming, the foundation is strengthening. And one day, seemingly out of nowhere, the seed breaks through the soil and begins to flourish. This parable holds a profound truth. Our efforts, though invisible, are never wasted. Just like the farmer, we must trust in the process, even when the results are not immediate. The law of karma offers a similar perspective. Every action we take, no matter how small, plants a seed. These seeds may not sprout immediately, but they are never lost. Imagine a field where you've planted hundreds of seeds. Some may germinate quickly, while others lie dormant, waiting for the right moment to grow. The results of our actions, according to karma, unfold when the conditions align. This teaches us patience and perseverance, as well as faith in the unseen. Take, for example, the story of the bamboo tree. For years after planting, there is no sign of growth above the ground. But during this time, the bamboo is building a deep and intricate root system capable of supporting its incredible height. Then, in a matter of weeks, it shoots up, growing over 80 feet. The years of waiting weren't wasted. They were essential for the bamboo's eventual rise. In our own lives, we often feel discouraged by the lack of immediate results. Whether it's learning a new skill, pursuing a career, or working on personal growth, the slow pace can feel disheartening. But what if, like the bamboo, the time spent underground is not stagnation but preparation? What if the struggles you endure and the small steps you take are quietly laying the foundation for something extraordinary? In Buddhism, the principle of anicca, or impermanence, reminds us that life is always changing. The conditions that seem stagnant today may shift tomorrow, creating opportunities we couldn't foresee. This is why the Buddha emphasized the importance of right effort, one of the steps in the Eightfold Path. Right effort encourages us to persist in cultivating good qualities and letting go of unwholesome ones, even when progress feels slow or invisible. Imagine an artist painting a masterpiece. At first, the canvas looks chaotic, a mess of brushstrokes and incomplete ideas. If the artist judged the painting at this stage, they might feel like giving up. But with patience and persistence, each stroke adds depth, and the vision begins to emerge. Our lives are much like that painting. The small, seemingly insignificant efforts we make every day are the brushstrokes that create the larger picture. One of the most profound lessons from the Buddha is that suffering often arises from our attachment to immediate outcomes. We live in a world that celebrates instant gratification, quick success, rapid transformation, and immediate results. But true growth rarely works this way. The Buddha's teachings invite us to step back from this mindset and embrace the long game. Instead of asking, "How fast can I get there?" we ask, "Am I moving in the right direction?" I once met a man who had spent years trying to overcome a personal struggle with anger. At first, he felt defeated by how often he failed. But with mindfulness, he began to notice subtle changes. Moments when he paused before reacting, times when he chose kindness over harshness. These small victories felt insignificant in the moment, but over time, they added up to a profound transformation. He told me, "Looking back, I see that every effort, no matter how small, was a step forward. This is the power of the long game. Each small step, each quiet effort is a drop in the bucket. Eventually, the bucket overflows." When we feel disheartened by slow progress, it can be helpful to look at nature. A tree doesn't grow overnight. It takes years of sun, rain, and storms to reach its full height. The lotus flower, a symbol of spiritual growth in Buddhism, blooms in muddy waters. Its beauty is not diminished by the mud. It is enhanced by it. In the same way, our struggles and slow progress are not setbacks. They are part of the process. I think of people like Thomas Edison, who famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's persistence wasn't about achieving immediate success. It was about learning, adapting, and trusting that each attempt was bringing him closer to his goal. This mindset mirrors the Buddhist teaching of upaya, or skillful means, finding the most effective way forward, even if it requires many trials and adjustments. In my own life, I've had moments when it felt like my efforts were in vain. One experience stands out vividly. Years ago, I was working on a project that felt deeply meaningful to me, but every step seemed to encounter resistance. There were days when I wanted to give up, convinced that my work wasn't making a difference. But over time, small, unexpected signs began to appear. A kind word from a colleague, a breakthrough idea, a sense of fulfillment that came not from external success, but from the knowledge that I was doing something aligned with my values. Looking back, I see that those moments of struggle were not wasted. They were the roots that grounded me and prepared me for growth. The long game requires faith, not blind faith, but a trust in the process of life. It asks us to believe that the small steps we take today are not meaningless, even if we can't yet see the results. This faith is not about waiting passively. It's about continuing to water the soil, even when the seed hasn't sprouted. It's about showing up, day after day, with patience and intention. The Buddha's teaching on metta, or loving kindness, offers another perspective. When we cultivate loving kindness toward ourselves, we learn to be patient with our own journey. We stop judging ourselves for not being there yet and instead appreciate the progress we've made. This kindness becomes a source of strength, reminding us that growth is not a race but a lifelong practice. As you reflect on your own journey, ask yourself, what seeds am I planting today? How can I nurture them with patience and trust? Remember that progress is not always visible, but it is always happening. Like the bamboo, like the lotus, like the tree, you are growing in ways that cannot yet be seen. Every effort you make, no matter how small, contributes to your growth. Every act of kindness, every moment of mindfulness, every step toward your goals is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. Trust that the picture will come into focus, not because you rush it, but because you allow it to unfold in its own time. Your efforts are never in vain. They are the roots, the foundation, the quiet work that supports your eventual rise. Trust in the process, and know that the long game is where the most profound transformations happen. 7. Your path, your strength. How every challenge leads you home. Imagine standing at the foot of a mountain, looking up at its peak hidden in the clouds. The path ahead is steep and winding, filled with sharp rocks and thick brush. You know the journey will be long and difficult, but you also sense that something meaningful lies at the summit. This is how life often feels. A series of challenges that test our resolve and strength, yet somehow we feel compelled to keep going. Why? Because every step, no matter how arduous, brings us closer to the truth of who we are. In the teachings of the Buddha, life itself is a journey, a path shaped by the choices we make, the challenges we face, and the lessons we learn. The Buddha once said, "The way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart." These words remind us that the destination we seek is not something external, but an unfolding within ourselves. Each challenge we encounter is not a detour but an essential step on the path to our true selves. One of the core teachings of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths, offers a framework for understanding this journey. The first truth, dukkha, acknowledges the reality of suffering in life. This is not a pessimistic view, but a compassionate one. It invites us to see suffering not as a personal failing, but as a shared human experience. The second truth reveals that the cause of our suffering often lies in tanha, or attachment. We cling to ideas, people, and outcomes, believing they will bring us lasting happiness. But life, as the third truth teaches, is impermanent, and the key to liberation lies in letting go of this attachment. How, then, do we walk this path with grace? The fourth noble truth offers a guide, the Eightfold Path, a practical blueprint for navigating life's challenges with wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental clarity. This path doesn't promise a life free of struggle, but shows us how to transform our struggles into opportunities for growth. There's a story about a man named Aaron, who once felt lost in the face of relentless hardship. Each day felt like an uphill battle, filled with work and responsibilities that left him drained. He began to question whether his efforts were worth anything. But when he met a wise teacher, he was given a new perspective. The teacher pointed to a tree standing strong against the wind and explained that it grew resilient because of the very storms it faced. Aaron began to see his struggles not as meaningless burdens, but as forces shaping his character and deepening his strength. This story mirrors our own lives. How often do we view challenges as roadblocks rather than stepping stones? When a relationship ends, a job is lost, or a dream fades, it's natural to feel defeated. But what if these moments are not endings but beginnings? Points where we are called to grow in ways we never imagined. In the law of karma, or cause and effect, we find another lens through which to view our struggles. Karma teaches us that every action, thought, and intention we put into the world creates ripples that shape our future. This doesn't mean life is a series of punishments or rewards. Rather, it is a dynamic interplay of choices and consequences. When we face a challenge, we have the opportunity to respond with wisdom and compassion, planting seeds for a brighter future. I remember a time in my own life when I faced what felt like an insurmountable loss. A close friend passed away unexpectedly, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. In my grief, I found myself questioning everything. What was the point of striving or building connections if they could be taken away so suddenly? But as I sat with my pain, I began to see something shift. The loss forced me to confront my attachment to permanence and control. It reminded me of the Buddha's teaching on anicca, the truth that everything in life is impermanent. This understanding didn't erase my grief, but it transformed it into a deeper appreciation for the present moment and the connections I still had. The river of life often takes us through turbulent waters, but it is in these moments that we learn to adapt and grow. The Eightfold Path offers tools for navigating these challenges, such as right view, which encourages us to see life as it truly is, and right intention, which helps us act from a place of kindness and clarity. When we approach our struggles with these principles, we begin to see them not as punishments but as opportunities to practice patience, mindfulness, and resilience. Consider the story of a woman who lost everything in a natural disaster. Her home, her possessions, and her sense of security were all swept away. At first, she felt paralyzed by the enormity of her loss. But as she began to rebuild, she found herself focusing not on what she had lost but on what she still had: a loving family, a supportive community, and the inner strength to start again. Over time, she came to see the disaster not as an end, but as a turning point that deepened her gratitude and reshaped her life in meaningful ways. What challenges are you facing right now? Are there moments in your life that feel like dead ends? Perhaps these moments are asking you to pause, to reflect, and to dig deeper into your own reserves of strength. Like a tree growing its roots in a storm or a river carving a new path around a boulder, we are often shaped most profoundly by the very forces we resist. The Buddha's teachings remind us that the path to peace is not about avoiding hardship but about transforming it. Each step we take, whether through joy or sorrow, is part of a greater journey, one that leads us closer to understanding ourselves and the world around us. The challenges we face are not detours. They are the path itself, guiding us home to our true nature. Reflecting on your own journey, what lessons have your struggles taught you? Have they made you more patient, more compassionate, or more resilient? These are the gifts of hardship, the unseen treasures that emerge when we embrace the full spectrum of life's experiences. Strength is not about reaching the summit without stumbling. It's about finding the courage to keep climbing, one step at a time. In the words of the Buddha, "With our thoughts we make the world." Let us use our challenges as tools to shape a world of wisdom, compassion, and purpose. Each challenge, no matter how daunting, is a chance to grow and a step closer to the strength within us. May we walk this path with courage and grace, knowing that every step, no matter how small, brings us closer to home. As we wrap up, I want you to take a moment and think about the challenges you've faced in your life. Have they shaped you? Have they taught you lessons you wouldn't have learned otherwise? Like Aaron, we all walk a path filled with twists, turns, and occasional storms. But every storm shapes the roots of our resilience. Every obstacle carves a path for growth. The beauty of life lies in its impermanence and its potential for transformation. Just as the lotus rises unstained from the mud, so can we rise above our struggles, stronger and wiser. Your journey is uniquely yours, and every step, whether joyful or painful, is part of your unfolding story. Before we end, I have a question for you. What's one challenge in your life that, looking back, turned out to be a blessing in disguise? Share your story in the comments below. Let's create a space where we inspire and uplift one another. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Lotus Light Teachings. Together, we can spread messages of hope and resilience to those who need it most. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, you're never alone, and your strength is greater than you know. Life is not about avoiding challenges. It's about learning to grow through them. Each moment, even the hardest ones, is a chance to deepen your roots and bloom into the person you're meant to be. Embrace your journey with patience, trust in your strength, and let your light shine. Until next time, take care of yourself, and may you find peace in every step you take.